Hello and welcome to HR Unplugged, BambooHR's new onboarding program, a check-in on progress. In this week's episode of HR Unplugged, we're checking in on the progress of the BambooHR new onboarding process. Anita Grantham and Vanessa Brulot interview special guest Megan Galloway, founder of Everleader, on the new program. Today's episode will give you an insider's view into the beta pilot, what's working and what's not working, and ideas you can implement in your own onboarding program update. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by BambooHR, the complete HR software. Simplify HR with award-winning solutions for everything from hire to retire with BambooHR.
Bamboo HR Performance here to talk about performance enhancement. And no, I'm not talking about roids or stems or growth hormones. No, Bamboo HR is software that enhances the performance of your team. Does running payroll take way too long? Does your onboarding bore people to tears? Well, Bamboo HR is an easy-to-use one-stop shop for time tracking, performance management, payroll, hiring, onboarding, so your team can perform in an enhanced manner. Performance enhancement! Try a free demo today at BambooHR.com.
Welcome to today's episode. I don't know if y'all remember, but Megan was here a few episodes back that we did about how we're evolving our onboarding process at Bamboo and how we partnered with Megan to make that happen. So we're so excited, Megan, that you're back. We want to call her a Bamboo again, and she has her own business called Everleader. That's fantastic. I'm grateful that she's an extended Bamboo again and would love you, Megan, to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, I love working with you all. It's so fun. I'm Megan. I live in Kansas City. I own a company called Everleader. I spent over a decade in corporate L&D, building learning and development programs from the ground up. And now I love to help other people build amazing programs inside of their organizations too. So that's what I do.
Well, Megan, we are so excited that you're here with us today. And we have some great questions for both you and Anita on today's topic. First, I want to talk about why we decided to upgrade our onboarding process at Bamboo. Anita, let's get your insights first here.
Yeah, so I have always felt that onboarding is really the first introduction that somebody has to understand what a culture feels like. And for a long time at Bamboo, we had done a lot of things, and this happened to many companies, right? As you went through COVID and you went from an in-person experience to a remote experience, it was hard, and it wasn't in a time frame that we could make it super intentional. And so everybody kind of just put together the best they could, and all of a sudden it started to be the run of show. And so we really just felt passionate around, like, there's so much great and new and exciting about Bamboo, and we want our team members to really feel successful. So one of the measures that we have for new hire managers is, would you hire this person again? And are they ramping at the pace that you would want them to ramp inside their role? And if we want to affect that score of ramping, which I think is a big important metric for us to look at. You hire someone, you want them to get up to speed. How can we influence that? And to me, it's through onboarding. And that's why we decided to really go after this and get a great outcome on cultural integration, but also getting to value quickly in the role.
Mm-hmm. Well, Megan, what are your thoughts coming into consulting on our change here? What did you see with the program before that made you feel like it needed an upgrade?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I noticed was Bamboo does a great job with like day one onboarding experience, like orientation. But there's a difference between like day one orientation and the more extended onboarding approach to how someone gets up to speed. And some departments did it really well. Like the CX department, for example, at BambooHR had a really thoughtful outlined onboarding program, but it wasn't applicable all the way across the board for all folks. And to your point about there being a lot of remote or hybrid employees, I think that there was, that connection piece that was a huge opportunity for people to get more connected more quickly in with the culture of the organization.
Mm-hmm. I love that. We're getting a lot of like comments in the chat too. And there's a lot of like really interesting comments being made. I know Kelly said it works well, but as a decentralized organization with almost all employees working remotely, I think there could be more to be done in that realm. So it's interesting because I feel like that's a challenge that a lot of companies are running into is, yeah, but we have a virtual world versus like in person. Any advice there in regards to that comment? Anita, do you have any initial thoughts? And then Megan, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and we debated it a lot as well. And we decided to take a stand and say, hey, we are a hybrid organization and we feel like we want people to start right and stay right. And for us, that meant that we were going to pay for everybody to come in for onboarding. So they may go back and be fully remote, which is great, but we felt like we wanted them to come in, get to know their manager, get to know their cross-functional team rights. And we felt like that would, again, get them to value faster in the role, help them understand everything about Bamboo, make physical connections they could take back to their virtual world and maximize. I don't know how many of you have onboarded remotely. I have, and it sucks. It's so hard to figure out who is where for what and to get everything figured out. And if we can get that uptime into a faster cycle so people know where to go for what, I think they actually can deliver on their jobs more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Megan, any other thoughts there?
Yeah. And I was so excited that BambooHR is making this commitment to getting people really integrated in more quickly with this immersive experience, because I do think that there is something different about being in person. I know that's not an option for everybody. And if it is an option, then I do think that it does make a difference. And we have some data that we'll get into later that showcases like how the responses acted around some of that. But yeah, I think that there are lots of different ways to do it, but being really intentional about how you want to create immersive experiences for people to feel like they're not only learning about their own role, but what happens inside of the organization, how they fit into the organization. And then the other big important thing that we were really focusing on is how the values play out in real life. And to do that, I don't think you can just stand up and deliver or have like online modules that like give you something that's like, okay, let me just give you a quick synopsis of what this is. People have to truly experience it to be able to get that accelerated path into onboarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for kind of taking that sidetrack with me. Wanted to hit on that one because I think it's a really important topic. And I think a lot of companies are running into that. So in our first episode on this topic, we talked about how important company values are to onboarding. Mm-hmm. Megan, can you give us a quick reminder about how we've incorporated our company values into our new onboarding experience here at BambooHR?
Yeah. So when we were designing this new program, we did decide that it was going to be in person, an immersive experience. But regardless of whether you were doing it in person or virtually, the kind of the philosophy holds true, which is we wanted to do two things with the program. We wanted them to get a deep dive into each of the divisions and understand how the business makes money and how different departments contribute. We wanted them to get a real understanding for not just like what the values are, but how they look in day-to-day practice so that people can really live out the values more quickly and they're not just words on a wall. So what we did is we created modules that go through each of those things in detail with experiential learning or like deep activities that get them to understand not just what the divisions do, but also what the values are and how they can like live them out. So each of the values classes aren't just like, here's what the value is. It's actually like a mini personal development session to understand what that value is, what it means to you, and how you can live it inside of the culture at BambooHR.
It's interesting to talk about and separate out because I see it in here. It's like onboarding tasks, benefits, IT. And so, Megan, can you talk to everybody about how do you think about all of those things as it comes into onboarding and where they can fit together?
Yeah, I mean, they're all important, right? Like there's all of these different components that fit into onboarding. So part of that is making sure that someone has access to a computer that has the rights that they need to get into the right kinds of software, et cetera. Like that is like the checklist of almost like pre-onboarding or orientation, like day zero type things. So it's like day zero is what are the things that this person needs to be successful from like a tactical perspective. Day one is what do they need to get on board and feel like they are welcome on the first day to understand what they're doing inside of the organization and where to go initially. And then onboarding beyond that is not just like the check the box type things, but it's really how do I operate inside of the system and how do I get up to speed in my role quickly? So they all kind of feed together, but they're all interconnected. But that's how I kind of view onboarding is more of the deep dive into how you could be successful.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something we have to add to. It was a lot in our surveys, like our engagement surveys, where people are saying like, it's hard for me to figure out where to go for what, who does what at Bamboo? How do I not do duplicitous work? Who has the answers for these things? Those were all kind of leading indicators, if you will, although it was on a lagging indicator survey. But for us, like if I look at those comments, it's like, okay, we could do more on day one to kind of give people a map of where they go to. and at least know where to go to find the answers, because internal communications is an art form. A lot of people don't have internal comms as a function. So you're doing it on intranet sites, or you're doing it through, G Suite, all of those things. And so you kind of have to find a way to direct traffic to help them understand where to go and why it's done that way at this organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love that one of the things you mentioned, Megan, was that you're bringing people up to speed for their role so that when they transition, they are equipped to be able to run from day one at that point. So I saw a comment earlier in the chat that talked about like, hey, like I have onboarding, but then as soon as they transition, it's like they can't handle the busy days. It's like, here's the intro, and then, okay, now run, here's the fire hose. And so it sounds like it's kind of this element of like helping them level up to get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good description.
Okay. So Anita, anything else to add here as far as like reasons why we wanted company values to be part of this onboarding process?
I just really feel like, I know I've already said this, but start right, stay right. I think that's the most important thing. And the other piece on values that I know Megan and you and Vanessa talked about this, values have to be more than words on a wall. And you all see me use these cards, right? In Evolution. Sorry, these are the new ones. Behind me are the old ones. You have to show how they work, how they are operationalized inside a system. And I think the only way that you can do that is through the experiential courses that Megan helped us design, where people are living inside of it, right? I love this, Mark. Like, what are my priorities? What are your priorities? What are your OKRs? What is an OKR? Like, how are we approaching them? This was a big part. Megan talked about it. I just want to double down on it. How does your organization make money? Like, a lot of people don't understand these things. They come in one little silo. And to me, a big part is to reduce those silos so you can see across and say, this is what our customer is, and this is how we serve them through this product, and this is how we monetize our system, and this is how we create a reliable, sustainable system for you to be employed at and build your career by being here. And those are really important messages you want to land in that first 44 days. Like, we've got our handbook for onboarding, and we have 44 days to really make sure that somebody stays. And so we wanted to maximize that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's kind of understanding how the full machine works. You're not just learning your little piece. It's like, oh, I'm making a big impact to how this whole thing is running. Here's how it works. Like, I love that. Deeper meaning. All right. So we have run the first beta pilot of the new program, and now a couple of additional runs. Walk us through the program outline first, Megan. What does the onboarding process look like?
Yeah, so it's a 2-day experience for this part of it. There's still orientation, which is day 1. This is like days 2 and 3, or it's running like every other week, I believe, at this point in time. And so it may be more like day 10 or 11 for someone, right? But yeah, so through those 2 days, the goal is that they are learning a couple of things that we just touched on. So we start out with like a welcome, a meet and greet for them to get to know the other people that are in the class. Because one of the benefits of being in person and having a group of 30 people that are cross-departmental is you now have this like group of folks that you're getting to know inside of the organization, the participants that you have, the facilitators that are coming in, all that good stuff. So we're creating community as part of this as well. So we start out by getting to know each other. And then the schedule gets into deep dives of either one of the values at BambooHR and activities that help reinforce that value and help them explore that value, or B, go through things like, how does sales work at BambooHR, and what are the packages that are offered, and what is our sales philosophy? And we do experiential learning activities that help them understand what that is. Or like OKRs are a great example. There's a session that's all about strategy. What is the roadmap for this year from a strategic perspective for BambooHR? How do you fit into that picture? How does your division or your team fit into that picture? And how do you want to make your first 44 days at BambooHR successful by contributing to those OKRs? So yeah, there is a variety of those things, and it culminates at the very end of day 2 in an executive panel where there are executive team members that do Q&A with the new team members, so that they get that face-to-face time as well with the senior leaders of the organization. So it's 2 full days and in-person immersive. People fly in for this, but that's the overall flow, is that they flip-flop between kind of talking about divisional, more tactical, here's how we do business, to here's here's how we're doing business with our values. So those are the two things that we're flip-flopping between.
It's so impressive how much you're able to fit in those 2 days and how intentional and thoughtful it is of all the different things and components that you included in it. And one of the things I'm curious about is what data have you seen come from this? Like from the first few beta runs, like what have you learned?
So much. One of the things that I think is a great measurement in general when we're doing these types of programs or when you're doing training initiatives, I would consider onboarding like a training type initiative, is an NPS score overall in the program. The reason why I like these is because they're easily benchmarkable against what other folks are doing in either your industry or other industries. So on average, onboarding programs land somewhere between a 30 to 50 on an NPS scale when you're looking at the effectiveness or the efficacy of the programs. From the first 60 days of doing this with over 50 participants going through, we are landing at an NPS of 97, which is amazing. And I'm so proud of how well it's being received. And I think really importantly, one of the things that's a huge part of this is 100% of people agreed after this experience that they're more connected with the company, with 88% of those people saying they are extremely connected with BambooHR after they finish this experience. So that is a pretty big shift. We saw that connectedness piece increase by 15% by implementing this new program. So that's something that's really exciting. And then the other piece that I always look at when we're talking about training is not just did people like this, but can they go apply this in their day-to-day? How applicable and relevant is this to them? Because we know that retention increases over time, right? And so there was a 98% applicability rating on this, which is massive. If you can get 60 to 70% on a training program, that's typically considered really good. But if we're at 98% applicability, that means that people are taking this away and doing something with it immediately, which means they're more likely to retain it. And that learning transfer happens more rapidly. So overall, the other thing was 98% of people also said they understand how the values look and how to implement them in their day-to-day. So just really great overall phenomenal statistics on a decent sized pool now of over 50 folks that have gone through this program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great ROI on this. I mean, that's amazing. And Anita, what's your reaction to this data? What have you learned so far about this?
Oh, I mean, I'm so glad that we doubled down on this. A lot of people organizationally pushed back. They didn't want to have this program. They're like, what's wrong with it? It's not broken. Our scores aren't that bad. And so this was a hill I died on. I was like, yep, I get it. And I'm doing it. And I think it's really important, and let's show you. So I feel really good that I didn't oversell and underdeliver. And to me, it goes to real intentionality around the problem to solve and what we wanted to create. And it's hard when something's not really broken to articulate the problem to solve. That was actually our biggest hang up in getting this off the ground. And so we were just really said, as an HR company, we believe we should be better at this. Our own data says that we should be better at this. We want to take our own data and leverage it into what we're doing internally. And we see this as an opportunity in an area to really be excellent in. And so I'm just glad that the data is playing out. There's still more work to do, but I think it's a great start. And then the other caveat here that helps make this work is that we're hiring a lot of people right now. And so one of the questions directly from the board was, what are you going to do to ensure that all the people that you're bringing on are the right people for Bamboo and they're going to be successful? And to me, this was a great answer to this, is that this, we're going to invest in all these people. How do we make them successful? It's going to be through this program. So those are some of the background pieces that I think are great. I'm really proud of Megan and the team for putting it together and the results that they've created.
Mm-hmm. And glad that you died on that hill, Anita, and pushed us through. And
sometimes it works. It doesn't always work, right? You got to take risks. And this one is, for me, there isn't a place I haven't revamped onboarding where it hasn't yielded these kinds of results. This was kind of a surefire bet for me. Megan, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think this is a slam dunk, and you don't need money to do it. And we can maybe talk about some ideas too about that.
Yeah. One thing I would add there that you said that I think is one of the most important things that I see from my perspective, working with lots of different organizations, is especially if you're growing quickly, one of the biggest challenges in that growth is that culture changes rapidly the more that your organization is changing from just a demographic perspective and bringing more folks on board. So one of the things that this is doing is it's making people really connected in with the organization's values, the mission, the goals, but it's also creating that consistency so that as you're scaling, you have a little bit more control over how you want to scale, not just, kind of haphazardly having culture happen to you. So I do think that's something that's really important as part of this.
Mm-hmm. Molly has a question here. Sorry, Vanessa, I just want to make sure while we're in this, like, are we going to do 3, 6, 9-month check-ins? What's working, what's not? We've talked a little bit about this, but what else could we put in that would help us integrate more quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question. From my perspective, I think that there are great opportunities to do this organizationally, but I think more importantly, once you get beyond that initial stage, this is something that you should be enabling and empowering your leaders, your managers inside of your organization to be doing with team members. So this is an opportunity for them to be building that trust and rapport with their team members, but also like managing expectations, having those real-time performance conversations and feedback, which we know millennials and Gen Zers are desperate to have. So I think it's more about empowering your leaders inside of your organization to have these 3, 6, 9-month check-ins versus it necessarily being coming like straight from HR. That's just my personal perspective though.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had another question as well. And Anita, you kind of mentioned this a little bit. So I wonder if this would be a good topic to chat about real quick is any ideas on how we can build this model with zero budget and no automation tools?
Yeah, there's been many times I built this without a Megan. And it's actually so we go back to learning programs and learning and development programs. This is a learning and development program. Take 5 people inside your organization that are passionate about onboarding. Have them represent different areas that Megan outlined. Have somebody from product, have somebody from sales, have somebody that can tell the story of the company, have somebody that talks about from finance and how it flows together, and somebody that is doing strategy. Again, they don't have to be their core jobs. There could be one person that does 3 of these functions and say, what are the top 5 things that anybody joining our organization should know about your role, this aspect of the company, and the bigger picture. And you can build this out so that you can have somebody who's great at speaking and engaging. I mean, I've always done this as a side hustle. It doesn't have to be a full-time day job. It's a great committee activity. It's a great culture building activity. Like people always say, I want a culture committee. And that I'm not really so sure about that. But having a culture committee that drives effectiveness of new hires, I think is high value. And so putting people against this and getting metrics, like take all of this data, use our metrics, copy the program, go out and use it. It will make your organization better. This is why we wanted to share it back with you. And you can build it inside without a dollar allocation, only a time allocation.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When we had a follow-up question to us, do you have training resources to offer training managers to do check-ins? What's kind of your helpful tip or response to that?
We don't have that right now. And it's a gap for us. We've seen it in all of our data. Megan is actually going to extend her time with us. And this is our next project because we've got so many new leaders. And, this is going to date myself a bit, but there is no GE pushing out fantastic leaders that everybody else is hiring. I don't even think big tech is doing that. I don't think Coca-Cola is doing that. We have to create leaders inside our own orgs. And so one thing that we're talking about adding into our product in the version that we're using. So don't take this to the product team yet, but we're going to beta test a tab that kind of walks through a check-in and an individual development plan that leaders can help use with their team members. We're beta testing a 360 product right now to give leaders developmental feedback separate from their performance feedback. We use the performance tab inside Bamboo, and we're doing mid-year check-ins right now. And with all of those things, we give a 1-page startup guide. Think if you go to IKEA and you get that 1 page of how to assemble the 1,000 pieces that you just purchased, it's a 1-page guide of this is how to do a mid-year check-in. This is how to use a developmental process around a 360. This is how to set up an individual development plan. And so we're looking to enable leaders with those things. So we'll keep you posted on how we're doing there, but we're beta testing a lot of things and we'll be doing more in this space.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Vanessa?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
The only thing from a philosophical perspective that I would add here is the goal with giving managers these types of templates and resources is not that they like have a burden of having to do something else, but they're tools that they can go leverage so that they're not having to recreate the wheel. But it also creates the consistency in your employee experience overall, because managers know how to approach these topics and conversations in a way that aligns with your values. And then that helps then in turn create that more consistent employee experience where people know what to expect from their leaders as they're going through this like check-in process. So really it's about creating those tools for people so that they don't have to feel like they're inventing the wheel every single time.
I love that. All right. Mic drop. We still need that. I need Apple to come up with the mic drop. I don't know if anybody from Apple's listening or Zoom or.
Oh, they're all listening to us.
All of them. Yeah.
I like it.
I just need a mic to drop when I do that. So, okay. So in our beta programs, what have participants found most helpful? Megan, let's start with you.
Yeah. So when looking at the data, one of the things that rose to the top was definitely like, because one of the questions that we asked post experience was, what's the one thing that you're going to take back from this experience? And about 75% of people said that the number one thing they were taking back was how to take the values into their day-to-day actions. So the values content really resonated with people. And then the other 25% of that was either connections they made with folks to understand where to go when they had things. And then the other thing was understanding how the organization makes money and or, what the different divisions did inside of the business. So those were the things that people found most helpful based on the data, which were also the biggest problems we were intending to solve.
Well, Megan, I'm curious, how does the data support the in-person involvement for the event?
Yeah, I love the data behind this because to Anita's point earlier, this was something that was definitely more of a risk of saying like, we're going to take this investment to do this. So the first thing we did was a beta cohort to basically just understand the initial reactions to the experience. And one of the questions that we asked is, would this experience be as effective if it was in person or if it was virtual instead? And 100% of people strongly agreed that the experience was better in person. And even after all 50 people have gone through this, that still lands at like a 98% agreement rate that folks really want to be in person for this type of experience because they do feel more connected on the flip side. So I do think the data is showing us that there's a really strong positive reaction to the in-person side of this.
I haven't sat in one executive meeting since this program launched, Megan, where somebody hasn't said, and this happened at Bamboo Beginnings and it was awesome. Or this happened at Bamboo Beginnings. Like it is cited all the time. And those are one-offs, but that's where, if you talk about an investment and where you're going to put your dollars, makes the case around why, even if you're a remote organization, why maybe you consider this as part of your travel and expense to get people together and to get them kicked off, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know we got a question here. Please scale this for me. How many are you onboarding that running these 2-day beginnings can be run every other week?
A lot. A lot. I think at the turn of the time, right? If we're halfway through the race, we're 7 months in. It's August, right? 8 months. It's 7 months in, 8 months in. And we've onboarded about 400 people into the system. And so we've got about another 300 to go. And we have one full-time person running it. And that was part of it. So that's where it goes back to, you have to have like a hiring clip to be able to do it. If you don't have that, you could still take the hiring committee that we talked about before and have them run it for you. Because I do think if you're running 5 to 10 people every other week, you've got to have kind of, what's it called? Like enough of a group together. And I think, 7 to 10, Megan, you'd be better at this. I think you need 7 to 10 to make it effective. Is that the number probably? So you would maybe hold, so you have 7 to 10 and maybe do it once a month.
And I think even if like with critical mass, I would say, even if you're doing this on a quarterly basis, that's still better than not doing it at all. Totally. So you can have other asynchronous or virtual considerations. And then the other thing too, is if you are already bringing folks in for like an all hands or an all company meeting or whatever you call it, and you do make that investment, consider how you can add this on to things that you're already doing when you're making investment to travel so that you're not having to break the bank for this, if that's possible.
Yeah. Like to your question, Julie, like, are we putting current employees through it? We're looking at that. And what we're looking at doing is when they're coming in anyway for another team activity, they could go through Bamboo Beginnings so that, like Megan's talking about, we're not just bringing them in for this single event. They started 2 years ago. They haven't been through it. We want to get everybody through. So we're going to do that at a cadence that works for the business as it works for the team members too.
Mm-hmm. This was a lot of good. We have a lot of good questions coming through this chat. All right. So one of the major features of the new onboarding process was including facilitators from different departments across the company. How has that been received, Megan?
Yeah, this is something that I was super passionate about as we were talking about this. I do not think HR should run this exclusively. I think that there's so much great opportunity for people to get connected into the divisions, but also the divisions get connected in with new hires. When you have folks from inside of the divisions be the facilitators for their content. I think that it's really great for, in particular, like one of the things that BambooHR did is they were identifying facilitators, as they said, who are people that are high performers that would do really well in this facilitation role, and that this would give them a really great opportunity to grow inside of their career to do this. And so it's like a win-win. You have folks that are, really great and engaged with the organization that then get to come in and have these types of experiences as a facilitator. Mark, you got it right there. We do like a trainer with those folks. And a couple of them even sat in the beta version so that they could just get an understanding for what the overall learning philosophies were and how it should look and feel. And then those continually rotate so that it's not an overburden on just a couple of people that are always doing this facilitation, but it rotates around to different folks inside of the department so that you can make more connections and that people feel like they're truly hearing from different parts of the business and getting in connected with these other division functions. And it's not just something that's being like told at them from HR.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, Anita, what feedback have you been receiving about the program?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked through it a little bit. It's been super positive. Some direct quotes are, "This is the best onboarding experience I've ever had. It's clear the company values us, even as a new employee, do the investments made in order to welcome us." I love this, right? Because oftentimes people spend a lot of money getting people in. And once you sign on the dotted line, it's like, oh, here's your life preserver. Maybe I'll throw you into the deep end of the ocean. And it's like, what are you doing to help us be successful? So this kind of makes good. We've talked a lot about this in our recruiting sessions of the show, that you have to make good on the employee value proposition. And this is part of our delivery on the employee value proposition, that we really care about our people. We want you to be successful. And then this next quote really speaks to it. "I'm very optimistic of my future with the company, and I want to be here for a long time." And that's what we want, right? Average tenure in tech companies is about 2 years. That's not long enough for me. I want it to be about 4 years. And so if I can get people to commit, and think about this is a Franklin Covey term that I use in Steel all the time. We are making deposits into that bank account, because you all know, as a company and as an HR team, we are not perfect, and we will make mistakes and we will have withdrawals. And so if you start with a strong buildup of deposits, that buys you more time during those ups and downs. And some of those ups and downs aren't even the fault of the company. Like, we're in a macroeconomic environment right now that's really challenging, and companies are having challenges because of what's just happening out there. You need people to continue to buy in and be patient as the company is moving through these hard things. And programs like this help you get that and get people to stay longer and committed for longer, which to me is what we want.
Mm-hmm. I think we'd love to share some ideas with the audience that they could implement. I know we've kind of been talking about that already, but especially if they didn't listen to the first episode on this topic. So as we close out the last few questions here, I'd love to ask both of you what your advice would be to our listeners if they are upgrading their onboarding process. What is the one piece of advice would you give? Anita, let's go with you first.
Get clear on what you want to achieve and manage and measure for it. Right? We shared a bunch of metrics with you because those are what we're selling, and that we're delivering on those things that we sold. So we identified the problem, we've measured them, and we've charted progress towards them. And if you can just follow in that rhythm, it will really help you in any program or investment that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Megan, what would your advice be?
People can only absorb so much. So we have to be really thoughtful about what it is we want them to get. To Anita's point about, like, what are the outcomes that you're wanting someone to get at the end of this? And one of the things that's really important from my perspective is, let's say that they are going through a division class about sales. Pick the one thing that's most important for them to learn deeply about sales. And then like train towards that one really specific thing inside of this experience. And you can always have more content that happens post this experience in an asynchronous format as you kind of roll it out over time. So I do think that there's a lot of opportunity, but I'd say if you can be thoughtful about your learning design, just any of the sessions that we have, there's only one learning objective for every single one of our 1 hour sessions. And that's on purpose, because otherwise when you do these bootcamp style experiences, otherwise it's too overwhelming for folks, and all of the topics build on each other. So it feels like one like learning arc or journey that then has this like one big outcome versus it being just a data dump for 2 days. So that's something that we were really thoughtful about in learning design.
I have to double down on this point, Megan, right? Because we were really specific. Your brain can only absorb so much. So you have to make it consumable. Super intentional that we only did 2 days. We thought about this, right? Is it 3 days? Is it 4 days? Is it 1 day? Right? And going back and forth. And it might change over time, but you can't give them that much and get them to really action on it. So just really want you to spend time on Megan's comment there. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great advice.
If you're like having trouble getting started on this, or if you like don't have a lot of resources towards it, just start with something and start with like, what is the biggest problem about your onboarding, and try one thing or one like, low cost, low risk experiment that then you can prove on. So that way you can get more resources to continue to build into your onboarding. So that's what I would say it would be my best advice for getting started with something like this.
I love it. Thanks, Megan. All right. So last question. We obviously have Megan on board here helping us upgrade our program at BambooHR, but we also made plans to help this program run after Megan moves to her next client. Walk us through what that looks like at BambooHR, Anita.
Yeah. So what we did is we said, okay, Megan, and sadly isn't going to give up her consulting business to work full time at Bamboo. And that's okay. We want to support her. And so we were recognizing that on our team, we didn't have the skill sets inside our team for somebody to run this program. And so we did is we opened up a rec to hire for. We actually hired somebody fantastic. He's been with Bamboo a number of years in a support role, and he moved over to take on this program. So as Megan was building the program, Ben was being onboarded, and they got to work together and do this handoff and do the beta together. So it was a bit of a train the trainer. And it's great because Megan's skill set, she's a wonderful facilitator. She's great at content delivery, but it wasn't going to scale, to the earlier question from Lois, to have her doing it all the time. And this way we've got somebody, our first learning and development resource on our people team that's delivering this program. He has space and availability to do other things for us too. And so we're starting to grow that function by having somebody full-time run this. And if we didn't have Ben, we'd be doing it like we talked about. We'd have a committee of 5 or 6 people. Like Vanessa talked about, we've got people inside the business. This was Megan's passion to come in and deliver the content. It's not us. He's more of like the Vanna White, right? He's coordinating the overall experience and charting the data and making sure it's consistent and making sure we've got great people coming in to deliver great content that meets our outcomes.
When you're building these types of experiences, they continually evolve over time. So just being really thoughtful about like after you've done it to continually measure, like if you've not seen like Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation, that's a really great starting point as you're thinking about like measuring training effectiveness and how you can prove ROI for those things. That's a good thing to Google if you're interested in kind of learning about those things, but making sure that you have people in place to help, whether that's formally or informally, to help progress that through is really important. And then also update the content as you're getting feedback, as your, as your business changes, or as like you restructure and divisions change or whatever that looks like. But the biggest lift is just getting started. It's once you've got it ready to maintain, then it runs a lot more smoothly over time.
Well, thank you both. That was a lot of really great advice and a lot of good side conversations. Thank you to our audience for asking so many thoughtful, intentional questions. Love the conversation. Anita, do you want to take us out in the outro?
For sure. I just wanted to see if there are any other questions we didn't get to. I just wanted to do like a quick run through questions. Mark, when you said like, what are my priorities? I think you were talking to the questions that you're asking inside the onboarding. So just let us know if you meant something different. We have too many communication options. How do we get people to submit to one? that's definitely an art, and it's something I would focus on as part of your onboarding, right? Like if you're having those challenges, use onboarding as an excuse to define your communication methodologies and giving people the places that they need to go for different things. So that's actually a great outcome of things you can get clear on. Is there information about the program you're referring to? I would look up the Bamboo Guide for Definitive Guide to Onboarding. And we kind of walked through, that was kind of the plan that we used, was our own data around what we needed to do for our onboarding. So that was the source. And then we created this program on top of it. There is one episode before this that it looks like Mike just put in where you can get all of the tools. I think there's some templates also included in that. So I think we got it all. I really want to thank Megan and Vanessa. Love being here with you two. You're just awesome. Makes every day better that I get to be on for an hour with you two. I want to thank all of you for spending your day and time joining us on this episode. Please visit us at hrunplugged.com, where you can sign up and subscribe to the series and view all the episodes in your favorite podcast format. Stay tuned for our next episode. And thanks for all you do out there. You're doing great work. Keep it going. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us for HR Unplugged. This series is brought to you by BambooHR. Visit us at bamboohr.com/HR-unplugged for video versions of the podcast, additional resources, and to learn more about how BambooHR sets people free to do great work.